right, great. I'm going to switch it to the PowerPoint, and I'm going to pass the ball to you. Andrea is going to read the questions, and like I said, you will send your answer for number 1 in the box to me, and once I get everyone's answers, then we will move to the second question.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Number 1, what does the word advocate mean? A, to make a child get all straight A's. B, to plead for the right of another person. C, to tell everyone you know that a certain agency is awful. Or D, none of the above.
All right, Krista, Janice, Laura, Pauline, and Carrie and Jacqueline. I've got you guys. Eliza, okay. And I think the only one I'm missing is Megan, and that's probably because she isn't in yet. So let's move on to question 2.
Okay, number 2, what law protects your families in regards to your child's education? A, IFSP, B, IDEA, C, IEP, or D, both A and C?
Krista and Carrie. Laura, Pauline. Jacqueline. Eliza. And Janice. All right, question 3.
Okay, number 3, what is your role as a parent guide regarding advocating for your clients? A, to attend all school meetings. B, to hang up and pretend they never asked that question. C, to empower the parent to find the resources and knowledge to advocate for their child. Or D, to call Carrie and ask to be removed from the file.
Eliza and Pauline and Laura. Krista, Carrie, Jacqueline. And Janice. So, question 4.
Number 4, what do you do if your client is still having problems? A, refer them to me, being Andrea, via Illinois Hands and Voices. B, do a conference call with me or Carrie and the client. C, reiterate the information you already provided to make sure you've not forgotten something. Or D, all of the above.
Okay, Krista, Eliza, Carrie. Pauline, Janice. Sorry, guys. I just have to record them, so that's why it takes me a minute. My brain and my pen work in 2 different directions sometimes. Laura and Jacqueline. All right, question 5.
Okay, and I noticed a typo in number 5, so I'll read it the way it's supposed to be read. What is one of the most important things for parents to do for their child with disabilities? A, make sure their hair is always clean. B, make sure they are always the best dressed. C, teach their child self-advocacy skills and make learning them part of their IEP process. or D, put them on a low-carbohydrate, high-protein diet?
Eliza, Krista, Laura, Gary, Pauline, Janice, Jacqueline. Good. All right, you may continue on.
All right. Well, tonight we're going to talk about advocating, and for me, for those of you that know me, it's hard for me to talk about advocacy without talking about IDEA, the law that protects our children with their educational going from age 3 to 21. So I'm going to try and take that out of there and not talk about that specifically, but more how do you get it across to your clients the importance of them advocating for their child. So we'll start the process, and please feel free if you have questions. You can forward them to me in the chat box if you want to, or you can interrupt me, or you can wait until the end, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So we'll get started. All right, so the definition of advocacy. Looked it up on Webster's, and it says that it's the act of pleading for, supporting, or recommending active espousal, meaning he was known for his advocacy states' rights. So basically, as a parent advocating for their child, you're pleading with the school district to get what your child needs. The end goal is to have your child learn to advocate for themselves, because once they turn 21 or 23 in some instances, they're on their own. So they need to be able to advocate for themselves. So that should be a big part of your client's jobs as well as your own, as well as it's a great thing once your child gets to a certain age to start putting it in their IEP, that the people that work with them at school work on those advocacy skills as well. Are they raising their hands? Are they asking for repetition? Are they asking for clarification if something's stated and they don't understand it? So that's the main important aspect, is not only to teach your clients how to advocate, or have your clients teach themselves really how to advocate, but really to make it so that their children get that education as well. That's the end result, is to get these children able to advocate. So Advocacy 101, and again, those of you who have been a guide for a year or longer have learned some things that I've taught in prior trainings, and so this is a repeat to some of those. But in any new process, one should always expect to feel anxious. It's almost, you should always think of an IEP, your first IEP, or an IEP that has a change in program as like a new job interview. It is nerve-wracking. You're going in, you're not sure about what's going to happen, and you want to get the best outcome. So the way to do that is to have certain skills so that you don't come across as a big bulldog. You don't come across as someone who thinks they can just come and walk all over everybody, but that you come in as an open-minded individual and that you are willing to work with the system and with the district. And not only say it, but actually mean it, because sometimes I've found, and we'll go into that in further details, that some of the clients that I've spoken with, they have very realistic expectations, but some of the expectations are not realistic. So I think that's also part of a job as a parent guide, is to kind of lay down those expectations. And if you feel that someone is just, wow, you know, their child is doing exceptionally well, but they want them to do better, you know, we need to remember what the goal of an IEP is. And so sometimes we need to bring them back and say, okay, yes, your child in your mind of minds is gifted and should be in the gifted program, but that's not what an IEP stipulates. So sometimes we need to bring them back and reel them back in so that they don't damage the parent-school relationship, which is extremely important. So as a parent guide, your most important role in this thing is to provide them brief information, but mainly to give them information to find out this stuff on their own. Where can they find out how to advocate? And I'll give you some of those things as well. I think the best thing that you can do as a parent guide is just, you know, make sure that you're almost teaching them manners. And most people are fine. I mean, most people are not going to go in and yell at school personnel and, you will give me what I want. But it's saying that never hurts anything. You need to know this isn't going to be your only IEP. There's going to be 12 other ones just like it or way different. So you need to make sure that they're aware of that because sometimes, as we know, if it's a matter of the heart, we tend to run with it maybe in the wrong direction. So your guide as your role as a parent guide relating to advocacy, especially legal support, is to provide resources and possible situations that maybe you've heard of. And remember, HIPAA, we can't name names, and you don't want to be overly specific in anything. But you can always say, well, you know, I've had a client that did this, this, and this, and it seemed to be successful for them. That is perfectly fine to do. Just make sure that you're following HIPAA. You never want to say, well, yeah, Joe Smith, his mom decided to do this. So very important to remember to keep the confidentiality of your other clients. But if you can provide them with real-life stories, I think that has more of a positive outcome for a lot of people. Regarding the law, and I've said this to many of you, don't even go into that territory. Tell them where they can find legal books that they can teach themselves about the law. If you're doing anything but quoting the law, you can get sued, and it's not even worth the risk. So, you know, interpreting the law is being a legal person, and unless you have a law degree, I would not recommend it. Okay, so I looked up to see, for those of you who don't know, I'm the president of Illinois Hands and Voices, and so I wanted to find out, you know, what my national organization is saying. Is it different than what I'm saying? Is it the same? Can I add to it? So I pulled up one of the things that I really liked about what they said, and this, I think, could be a great tool for you to provide to your clients. You can spiff it up and put it in a document if you wanted to be able to provide it to them. But it's to define the situation. Ask yourself, and then there's several questions. What is it that your child or family needs? What are the issues? How can you prioritize these issues? And so on. And you can see all of them. How is the situation best approached? Is it through a meeting, through informal discussions? And that's going to depend on the severity of the issue. Or if it's the 5th time you've asked for the same thing, then obviously you want to do a meeting. But sometimes it's just an email. Do you mind, you know, my child says they're sitting close to a fan and it's disrupting them, or my child's interpreter is over in the corner and my child's in the other corner, they really can't get good access. I think those are perfectly legitimate things to send an email or to get your hearing itinerant involved in. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to call and get a meeting. Those, again, are good techniques that you can teach your clients to protect that parent-school relationship. Again, who is involved in the situation? Where is the issue occurring? What are my goals in this process? And what is the common ground of everyone involved? Okay, so this is a great tool for you guys to use, and you can always access these webinars. So if you wanted to take this information, feel free to do that. Here's some other information that was provided on the national website of Hands and Voices. Just some information. So you need to find out as much information as you can, and such as your rights, IDEA, the Disability Discrimination Act, Education Department guidelines, all of these different things they put in here. Illinois School Board of Education. What does Illinois say about IDEA? You know, as a state, we have to follow IDEA because we've chosen to, but we can also add to it. We can't subtract from it, but we could add to it if we wish to. So there could be more benefits that our state provides than what the IDEA provides. And for those that are new, I'm assuming that you know this, but the IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It's what protects all children with disabilities from age 3 to 21, and in some instances 23. Okay, knowing who is responsible for change, knowing the available support services, so on and so forth. Okay, so why you communicate with schools? Well, there are several different reasons. Maybe we're requesting information, we're requesting action, providing information, declining a request, expressing appreciation, building relationships, identifying and solving problems, clarifying decisions, or motivating people. There are so many reasons that we would communicate with the school, and there's so many different ways we can communicate with the school. You find the comfort and have your clients find the comfort that they feel works. I've had teachers for my own daughter who's going into 4th grade tomorrow, and the first teacher wanted to use notebooks for communication. The second teacher wanted to do emails. And the third and fourth teacher that I found out this morning, they liked emails as well. So that works perfectly for me, and it works great for them. So I find that out. You should find that out. Your clients should find that out just by simply asking a question. You know, how do you work with email? Does that work for you? Should we do a notebook? Should we have, should we have a form that we fill out each week? What would be the best way to communicate weekly? And then if there's anything that goes on within the school year, your best bet is to determine how has my communication gone so far. If you're not getting any answers, then you might need to go to the next person in charge of your child's education process. Okay, how to communicate or work with schools. You request things in writing. Again, I'm going to go back to that a little bit and state that that is dependent also on the severity of the item that you need and what your relationship is with the school. There have been many instances where the relationship is such as pick up the phone, my child needs batteries, or pick up the phone, this isn't working, or whatever it might be, or my child is having difficulty with this. Sometimes it's a phone call, but if it's something that you feel might get resistance or your clients might feel gets resistance, definitely request it in writing. Use courtesy and respect when communicating with school personnel. You do not gossip to other parents or other teachers about your issues. You give teachers and school personnel ample time to reply to your requests. Don't bombard them with emails or voicemails voicing the same concerns over and over again. You always, this is one of my golden rules. If there's any kind of dispute going on with the school, so it's not just an ordinary general day where your child's at school and the phone rings and it's the school district, you pick it up, hello, and they say, your child's sick, we need you to come and get them. But say, for instance, you're asking for something that they don't really want to give you, or there's just some resistance, or you really don't know your school district very well, then I always recommend to let your machine take the call. Why is that? It allows you time to prepare your thoughts and give the best response to whatever their questions might be. Sometimes if you answer it, maybe you've come in and you've got 5 bags of groceries that you need to get put away. All of a sudden the superintendent is on the line and they have a question for you. If there's ever resistance going on with the school, my number one thing is always let the machine pick it up. It's just the best way to do it. They're going to leave a message. They don't have time not to. They don't have time to keep calling back until you answer the phone. So always let the message be given. You have time to prepare. You call back. If that phone call makes you angry, you have time to calm down so that you have your nice voice on when you call back. And again, be nice. Don't yell, demand, or kick or scream. It is important that your client understands what their rights are regarding their child's education. Okay, so here's the separation. When Carrie asked me to do this presentation, I wanted to make it so that it was easier for you to not question, well, am I allowed to do that, or should I be doing that? So what is the parent's role in the advocacy process? It's to learn enough of the law to speak from it. It's to plan for their child's educational future. In this, parents should have short and long-term goals. It is to advocate for their child's educational future. Learning advocacy skills is crucial. Now, okay, now we come to you as a parent guide. Your role is to provide the parent with the resources, not to find the answers. Your job is not to give the answers. It's to give them the resources to strengthen them, because our whole goal in this process of parent guides is to make the parent that we work with feel confident enough to where they don't have to call you for every single thing. That's our job. Our job isn't to do stuff for them. Second suggestion, to give suggested tips to strengthen their own confidence so they can be seen as someone in the know. To not provide actual educational law, just where to find it. And I've got some ideas of where to find those coming up. How can we do this? We can provide the tools, internet sites, books, suggestions, etc. We can provide the confidence. When you gain the knowledge, you will help your child. That is a powerful statement you can make to a parent. Provide examples. Remember, never use names, but feel free to give examples of other clients you've worked with and the strategies and the outcomes that they had, good and bad. I don't think it's always great to give only the good, sunshiny things that have happened. Sometimes you don't know what district they're in. You don't know how their district is going to respond to something. So they need a realistic expectation, and I think that's the best way to do it. You don't want to be all doom and gloom either, so if you only have bad advice to share, you might want to not give those examples because sometimes that can be worse. Now, listen. What are their fears? What are their concerns? Listen to what they're saying to you. Build them up to empowerment. Empowered people succeed. If they have the knowledge and confidence, they no longer need you. This is our goal. Ask for help. Use your resources among us here at Guide by Your Side and Hands and Voices to gain examples and strategies that have been proven. Don't reinvent the wheel. Now, how do you do that? Well, you can refer them to me at Hands and Voices. You can refer them to me as Guide by Your Side or Carrie as Guide by Your Side. And you can always do conference calls with me, three-way calls. You can do conference calls with Carrie. We can help you with these things with your clients. If you feel that I've tried everything and my client still is scared to death, is there anything that you can do? Certainly. Sometimes it's just a different voice that they need. So certainly, if it comes to that, Carrie and I are here. Hands and Voices is here. We're certainly willing to help out with that. Tell your clients to ask. Okay, so back to the Hands and Voices National stuff. I really liked that. This is the one thing that I've always said. The best way to get the answers is to ask the following each time an interaction occurs. And it just takes me back to high school when we were writing essays, and you had to do the who, what, why, when, where, how, and explain. Well, just like in anything, this is what your clients should be asking. Who is it that can get me that? Or who is it that can answer that question for me? What is it that I want exactly, and why do I want it? When do I expect it to be done? Where would I like it to happen? How would I like to see it happen? And explain what it is they're looking for. So if they do this, so they get that phone call and they let it go to a voicemail, and then that voicemail asks a question. If they ask all of these questions before they call back and answer that question from that personnel at the school, they're going to have a better outcome. There's not going to be another, oh, well, let me get back to you. Oh, well, let me get back to you. A question was asked. They're going to answer it. Done. Okay, general problems. Well, schools are bureaucracies. The bottom line is the almighty buck, unfortunately. So an advocate's challenge here is to get the school to treat their child as a human, not a number. I always recommend to all of my clients, and for those of you who know me, I teach an advocacy training seminar that lasts about 8 hours in total. It's partially advocacy training, and it's partially IDEA law training. And one of the things that I always say is when you go to your IEP meeting, somehow have a picture of your child. It just brings a human touch to the meeting. Now, if you're on your third, fourth, fifth meeting with that school and they know what your child looks like, you don't need the picture anymore. And there's going to come a time where your child will actually attend the meetings as well. From what I understand, it's middle school, but it all is dependent on your child. It's dependent on the school. It's dependent on the parent. So on the other hand, a good advocate also manages the meeting like a business person. So you don't want to, show up and, sit down on the chair and lounge back. You want to sit there. You're a part of you're a part of that entire process. You are a team member. You need to sit in there and be serious about it. You need to be ready to listen to what other people are saying and truly listen. And you have to be ready to provide what your information is clearly and precisely, not babbling and not going off on tangents. And that's part of the preparation of, have it written, have, your husband does one job, you do the other. If you're on a tangent and you're running away with it, your husband needs to hit your leg or something so that you're working good as a team in that meeting. The balance of this all comes back to strong advocacy skills. Another general problem is one size fits all. I've been hearing it in the state of Illinois. This is what we do for our deaf kids. They all go to X school. That's what it is. All of our deaf kids use this mode of communication. No, we don't do that. Cute speech? Sorry, we don't do that here. Well, that's where your teaching to your client of advocacy skills is going to help them. Because if they know the law, they will know that a one-size-fits-all is breaking the law. Because an individual education plan cannot be a one-size-fits-all. Because each and every child with hearing loss, even if they use the same methods and modalities, is completely different. So that is where just that general knowledge will help them through that process. And as a lot of you know, I can get all fired up about that, so anytime you want to talk. The child's doing great and they are within the average. This is something that I've been seeing more often than not. A child is doing phenomenally well. They're age appropriate with their language level, and a parent wants to place their child in a specific school, but that specific school isn't really necessary. Sometimes, you know, this is when a parent needs to do the research to determine, first of all, if their child requires extra help. Sometimes a child isn't in need of it, but the parent wants it anyway. And sometimes it's just one of the not-so-great parts of our job where we really need to be good parent guides, and we need to bring them back to reality and say, you know, you really need to go back and you really need to look at the other things, the other options the school is providing. You'll know it. You'll see it when a parent, when their child is doing perfectly fine, yet it's not enough to that parent. Sometimes that's when you as a parent guide need to find a nice enough way and a roundabout enough way. You don't want to come out and say, you're just expecting too darn much. But you got to try and get that information across to them, because you're doing them a disservice if you're not being upfront with them about it. If you're making them believe, yeah, you're totally right, they should be at that school, that's not fair, because if in your heart of hearts you think that, wow, you know, I think that a general ed class would probably be okay for your child, you may want to say that. And again, contact Carrie or I if you feel, you know, I really feel that this is the right thing for the child. This is why. This is the information that I've gathered from the parent, and we can help you move from there if you feel you can't do it yourself. Never recommend it. Oh, here's a big one that I say to everybody. For children, especially in grade school and middle school, never recommend stepping down from an IEP to a 504 plan. Why? Because a 504 plan does not have measurable goals, so there is no way to determine if your child is meeting or making progress. So until your child is more independent and able to kind of advocate for themselves and do their own educational planning, really, I would recommend always sticking with an IEP. Now, with that said, for those of you down in the southern part of the state, I've had clients down there that have had 504s that on paper look like an IEP. So make sure that that 504 isn't in fact a 504. 504 plan is accommodations only. All they're going to do is provide your child with seating placement, provide your child with a interpreter if they need one, provide your child with an FM system if they need one. That is it. There are no measurable goals as to how that is working for your child, how your child is doing within a classroom. Is your child obtaining the language that the rest of the children are obtaining, so on and so forth. So always, you know, that is one thing that I would always recommend to my clients. Stick with the IEP. Find something that you can make a measurable goal, something. And if you have questions about that, I can probably give you some ideas. Okay, parents' misconceptions and possible solutions. Here we go to this. I want my child in blank school, but they do not need this intensive an education. My child is gifted and requires additional one-on-one educating. I am a member of the IEP team. The school must do what I want for my child. I know my child has a cochlear implant and does extremely well. I still want interpreting services. Okay, so those are some of the things that I've actually heard. So, and the one that wanted interpreting service, the child didn't sign. So there have been some very unrealistic expectations with parents, and I think and I hope you agree with me, Carrie, but I feel that as parent guides, part of our job is, if we're listening and we're hearing those things, is to maybe gently tell them or gently help them through that process, that maybe sometimes, you know, we can't get everything we want. Let's just make sure we get the very, very important things. Okay, so top tips to success in advocacy. First, never get angry in front of school personnel. Not worth it. If you're getting frustrated, ask for a break. I always recommend that. Always return calls, write emails, and visit the school prepared. Always ask questions for clarification. If you do not know what is meant by a statement or a document, ask. Always get your questions answered. Sometimes your questions are not answered directly. You always need to follow up with an email or a phone call when this happens, restating your question and asking for it to be addressed. Because a lot of times what happens is you're asking a question in a room full of people that make up your IEP team, and the person that's in there, that is the person that can say yes to everything, can't say yes to that request. Well, somebody can. So if something has not been answered in a meeting, feel free to ask a second time. If it's still not answered, note that down and ask it another day. But make sure that gets, or even as a follow-up. You know, thank you for your time in the meeting. You know, we were grateful for this, and this, but we did have a question that we felt hasn't been answered. Could you please address it? Boom, send the question out. Never assume that the answers given are the final answers, especially when it isn't the answer that you want. Very, very important, never bash or talk about school personnel to other parents on the playground. This happens way too much. I hear it in my own school, and it's not worth it, because there could be one person there that thinks that if they just rat out somebody else, maybe they'll get what they want for their child, and it's not worth it, because it could put a bad mark on you and your child. And look, our kids spend, 6-7 years in elementary school, 2 to 3 years in middle school, 3 to 4 years in high school. So we need to make nice with these people that we're working with. Helpful hints and information. School bureaucratic rules make it difficult for schools to be creative problem solvers. Standardized education are not designed to meet unique needs of children with special needs. So that is why we have IEPs, so we can meet the unique needs of our children. Schools are losing funding left and right. This makes the parents' job to do their research and become creative. Yes, the law states the team will decide, but remember, every other team member is bound to a budget. We need to be creative to get around that budget. Simply put, don't ask for the impossible in this economy. Ask for the necessary. This is a great hint to give to your clients. It's not the time to be asking for everything. As I teach in my class, have a list of things that you want and a list of things you can't live without. The list of things you can't live without should be shorter than the list of things you want. Stay out of the mad and move into the solve. It's not worth it being mad. It's not worth it being frustrated. It's not worth calling your hearing itinerant because you're ticked off at the teacher because the speech therapist did this, because at the end of the day, those three are going to get together without you there, and it's not going to bode well for you. Okay, so here when I talked before about don't change the IEP, so here are some differences just in bullet form. So the IEP is an individually designed education plan to meet a child's unique needs. It requires measurable goals, be set and reported, specialized instruction designed within the IEP document, and parents are in attendance of this meeting. For a 504, it's accommodations for a child to continue to be educated in the regular education classroom. The equipment such as an FM system, sound fields, etc., for which the child needs to be educated within the regular classroom. Also, interpreting services, CART services, those types of things would be considered a 504 as well. And then parents are also in attendance at that meeting, so it's not as though, okay, well, we changed from a IEP in 7th grade to a 504 in 8th grade, and then we never have a meeting again. No, you still have annual meetings. You still discuss the accommodations and make sure that the accommodations are fitting, but there are no measurable goals whatsoever to see if the accommodations are working for your child. There is no way of knowing. whether it is. That's why you want to make sure your child's old enough to be able to report that to you themselves. So what does the law ensure? The law is written to ensure that your school provides your child with a free, appropriate public education that includes special education and related services designed to meet the child's unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. Now, that is me quoting the law. I didn't quote all of it. As you see, I have some dots where I left out some of the long jargon. But if you memorize this and you say this to your clients, they are going to think you know everything. But I've said this so many times that I can say it in my sleep. So it is something, knowing free appropriate public education is just something that should roll off all of our tongues easily, because that is what IDEA is all about. That is what an IEP is all about. So those types of things. And then the rest of it, just something to know. The parent is an advocate now. What is the next step? To teach the child to advocate for themselves. And I found this. I was just looking up IEP versus 504 because I wanted to make sure that I had those right, because I typically don't talk about 504 plans too much. So I found this quote, so I'll just read it to you guys. Arguably, the most important skill for students with disabilities to acquire is that of self-advocacy. This involves knowledge of one's rights and the skills necessary to ensure enforcement of those rights. Regular educators should remain aware that self-advocacy training is an important part of specialized instruction. Remember that students are in the process of learning these skills. They are not masters of these skills. As such, be helpful to students with disabilities. Encourage their efforts to enforce the modifications and accommodations to which they are entitled. As students learn to use self-advocacy skills, they may initially use these skills in an unrefined or harsh manner. Try not to be insulted or become defensive when students attempt to enforce their rights as persons with disabilities. Remember that these students must learn to identify and enforce their rights, and that they had better learn this by the time they graduate. If we can all remember this, and you know, when we want self-advocacy to be promoted within our IEP, that we read this. It says everything. It says everything about how important it is, and that these kids aren't experts at this. They're learning this, and that we are, as teachers and educators, they should enforce this with the child and say, you know, that's great, or here's the way you should put that. But to enforce it and really want it and not get offended because the child, you know, stood up and said, I can't hear or whatnot, it's very important that we know this and that our educators know this, and the way to get our educators to know this information is by putting it in our child's IEPs and having our clients put information such as this in their own child's IEPs. The sooner you start advocacy skills, the stronger they will become within your child. Recommended books. This is the book that I recommend, From Emotions to Advocacy. This is the book that I use within my classes. It's very, very user-friendly. It's about $16 on federweb.com, which I'll give you all of those websites. So if your parent comes to you and asks you, they can go to the education law section in their library, and they might be able to check this out. But there'll probably be 65 other books there as well. I've read about 5 of them, and this is the one that I found the easiest to get through with the most information. Here's other books that Wright's Law has written, produced, whatever. No Child Left Behind. A lot of this law, the No Child Left Behind law, differs from the IDEA. So it's interesting to see the differences and how they kind of loop in together. Special education law, this red book, the second one, is specifically the law. And the good thing about it is the attorneys that are at Wright's Law, they actually kind of write it in layman's terms for those of us that are not attorneys. And All About IEPs is a great book. It's one of their newest books, and it actually has specific cases that they've dealt with and how they've overcome them, or how they worked with that family and how that family persevered in that suit that they might have had, or how they got what they needed for their child. And then Surviving Due Process, which I have yet to read. So Those are the books. Here's some advocacy assistant websites. So you have rightslaw.com, you have FedaWeb, you have NICHCY, which is the National Council on Disabilities. They have a lot of good information. And then, oh no, that's NCD. The NICHCY is National Dissemination Center for Children with Disability. And then handsandvoices.org, our national website, has a lot of information that they have produced from all the different states, all of the different board members within the state, within the country that, like me, hold a passionate place for this law and how to get your child's rights to be held up. Okay, here's more, and again, you guys can get this information. Don't furiously write it down. If you want it from me, I can easily just copy and paste it from my slides and give it to you. Parental support is illhandsandvoices.org, which brings them to Illinois Hands and Voices. Advocacy support would be FedaWeb. They can get information there. Special education law is rightslaw.com. Now, FedaWeb is a Rights Law website, but it's FETA is short for From Emotions to Advocacy, so it's all about their, teaching parents advocacy skills through their book. And then I always recommend this Yellow Pages for Kids, and it is, again, another Rights Law feature within their website, and you put in the state and the city where you live, and it gives you any kind of, bureaus and helpful information in your area that could help you and your child with disabilities. Here's some more helpful sites as well. Again, don't furiously write them down. You can, these are sites that basically I have found over the years. Usually it's when I have a class coming up and I'm spiffing up my presentation, I go in to see if there's any new ones or if some of the ones that I had have gone away. And all of these I have found to be helpful. We have ISRC, which is here in Illinois. Illinois Hands and Voices. Choices for Parents is Karen Aguilar's group. And the best one is at the bottom. You Google it and you type in what you're looking for and you'll get all of this stuff. So that I always strongly recommend that, but always know that what you find on the internet isn't always true. So again, be cautious about that. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we go to the post-test questions? All right. You ready to go on, Carrie?
Yes, I am.
All right. Okay. Number one, what does the word advocate mean? A, to make a child get all straight A's. B, to plead for the rights of another person. C, to tell everyone you know that a certain agency is awful. Or D, none of the above.
Okay, we're good.
All right. What law protects your families in regards to your child's education? A, IFSP, B, IDEA, C, IEP, or D, both A and C?
Okay.
Number three, what is your role as a parent guide regarding advocating for your clients? A, to attend all school meetings. B, to hang up and pretend they never asked that question. C, to empower the parent to find the resources and knowledge to advocate for their child. And D, to call Carrie and ask to be removed from the file.
Okay.
Okay. What do you do if your client is still having problems? A, refer them to me via Illinois Hands and Voices. B, do a conference call with me or Carrie and the client. C, reiterate the information you already provided to make sure you've not forgotten something. Or D, all of the above.
Okay, and 5.
Okay, number 5. What is one of the most important things for parents to do for their child with disabilities? A, make sure their hair is always clean. B, make sure they are always the best dressed. C, teach their child self-advocacy skills and make it part of their IEP. Or D, put them on a low-carb, high-protein diet.
Excellent. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and